mahasiswa bisa menghadap ini. Sebagian hadir secara offline, ya, dan sebagian lagi hadir secara online, ya. Terima kasih atas kehadiran Bapak Ibu dosen, Pak Syarial, Ibu Wisma, Bu Ira, dan Bu Iis, serta para mahasiswa. Dan terutama, ya, we thank Dr. Martin Lam, ya, from University of Leeds, ya, who was here, a long time ago, 20 years ago, yeah, from 97 to 99. Yeah, he was here, but he didn't live here. Yeah, he just came here for a visit. Yeah, but he lived in Jambi, right? Yeah, he lived in Jambi because the language center in Jambi was needed more serious help than our language center here. So our language center was better than the one in Jambi at that time. Yeah, we were under Asian Development Bank fund, yeah, and ADB, Asian, right? The Asian Development Bank, yeah, program, yeah, before JU project, yeah, that was ADB project. Now, Dr. Martin Lam is working at University of Leeds in England, but his wife is from Semarang, yeah, so he speaks Indonesian. Yeah, but try to speak English if you can, because the 10 students, no, less than 10, yeah, maybe 6 or 7 students are attending this program from Cambodia and from Thailand. Yeah, so if you speak Indonesian, please translate. So yeah, they understand it. Yeah, okay. They cannot attend it here. So we thank Dr. Martin Lam for coming here to visit us and to give a lecture on motivation Indonesian learners of English, insights from theory, research, and personal experiences. Yeah. So after teaching for so many years, of course, he has a lot of experiences. So please be proactive and active, asking him, especially about research topics. Yeah. How many of you are students here? Because some are alumni, right? Almost all of you are students, yeah? So if you haven't got any topic for your thesis yet, so please ask him. Yeah. Dr. Martin, we have just got our accreditation score, and we are now considered excellent. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much for all assistance from you. Yeah. I think just about 5 or 6 study programs in Indonesia accredited excellent at postgraduate level. Yeah, yeah, at postgraduate level. So we are one of them. And we learned a lot from this process. Okay. And we now realize that doing research and publication involving students is very, very important. Yeah, very important. And writing books is also very important. From the research result, and then we write books, and we use the books for teaching. So doing research involving students, publication, writing books, and use the book for teaching. And therefore, the status of lecturers is very important. Yeah. So the accreditation depends very much on the lecturers and students. Yeah. And we are lucky, yeah, to have done that all. And also, this is because we have uniqueness. Yeah, we have a uniqueness in our study program, because first we have overseas students. We have 9 students from overseas, 7 from Cambodia, and 2 from Thailand. Yeah, and this adds to the score very much. We also have a center, yeah, center for training and guiding teachers and postgraduate students to write articles for international journals. And this is also one of the uniqueness, you know, of our study program. And we often invite lecturers from overseas. Yeah, this is one of them. Yeah, Dr. Martin Lam came here to give you fresh and new ideas on research in language teaching, English language teaching. Okay, this is another uniqueness of our study program. So now we are happy. Yeah, we have the right to be happy. Yeah, because we are one of the best. Although we are still young, 7 years old, but we are one of the best. Yeah, in Indonesia. Yeah. So you are the alumni, you are the student, we are the lecturers, and the users of the alumni have the right to be happy, yeah, and to be confident, yeah, to be confident. So we are one of the best, yeah. Why not? We have to be confident, and usually the confidence will boost our motivation. Okay, we hope so. Another one, the advantage of this status is you can apply for scholarship, yeah, dari LPDP. You can apply for scholarship. So this is one of the advantages, and we expect that we'll get more students, new students, yeah, because of this advantage. Okay, again, thank you very much for coming, for attending this lecture from Dr. Martin Lam. And hopefully this will give us a lot of insights, a lot of new information for our career, for your research, and also for us, yeah, our lecturers, for our future research. Thank you very much. That's all from me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Next, Pak Syarial will guide to be the MC or the moderator of this talk, yeah, because Martin Lam is Pak Syarial's friend. Friend in England and here.
Thank you, Prof. Safnil. So like Prof. Safnil said, Martin is not strange for us, especially at English lecturer at UNIP in 1997 and 1999. You know, Martin Lam at the time worked at a British Council, and British Council, and including Martin Lam, create that is the first UPT in Indonesia is here. So before only a language lab, and then British Council create the first UPT in Indonesia as the sample is UNIP. Yeah. And then IPB, ITS is learning from us how to build the UPT at the time. So 1997, Martin Lam came to Bengkulu and then worked for 3 years. So now he is pulang kampung from Leeds. When we were in England, we met once, Martin. 10 years I stayed in England, only once we met. Even Leeds from Newcastle is only 1 hour, but the time is hard. busy. And you know, one of our lecturer, Echo there, that is from Lancaster. Yeah, not far from Leeds as well. Yeah, just finished. And then now he is the lecturer here. That's good. When Martin was trying to teach, to give the speak later on, you will not strange. You will not watching the Harry Potter language. Martin is international language. He is not Leeds dialect or Newcastle dialect or Liverpool dialect. He is international language. He speak clearly. So not like you watching the Harry Potter film. later on you will see also Martin will try to create, like I always said to you, when you teach English, you have to use English. So probably Martin will try to force you when you teach English by that way, because we believe, Martin believe as well, that learning the language start from listening. If your students never listen of English, so they will never speak English. So that's let's see Martin experience, because when 1995, I think Martin teach English at UGM. One of his students is our previous rector. Ridwan Nurazi is one of the student. 1998. 1988. Jadi tahun 1988 Martin ngajar di UGM, itu Ridwan Nurazi itu muridnya. Akhirnya jadi rektor. So you are excellent as well. Okay, Martin, time is yours.
So, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Pak Safnil, and thank you, Pat Eric, for your very warm introduction. It is, I'm honored to come back to Bengkulu for the first time for 23 years since I left Indonesia in 1999. And as Pat Safnil and Pat Eric said, it was at that time I was based in Jambi, but I was working for this Asian Development Bank project to develop university language centers. And I was responsible for advising on two universities, Universitas Jambi and Universitas Bengkulu. And of course, I wanted to live in Bengkulu, but they said, no, you must go to Jambi because they are very terbelakang, you know. Here in Bengkulu, you know, I didn't realize it was the first UPT Bahasa. And one of the reasons that the UPT Bahasa was so good in Bengkulu was because the Kepala was Pat Eric, Eric Shadial. Yes. But what really impressed me actually about Pat Eric was not that he was the boss of the language center, but that he played football for Indonesia. Yeah. I don't know whether you knew that, but he played football. He was a very, very good footballer, and then became a journalist, yeah, football journalist. So he's always combined his education work with other interests, which makes him a very rounded personality. So am I sitting in the right place for the Zoom?
You can move.
I can move.
Yeah, you can move.
Okay.
Can the camera move? Bisa pindah-pindah, bisa.
So if I go and stand there, it's okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yep. What about the mic, the voice? Manual.
No, you have to use one of them. Okay, maybe I go back to yeah, okay. So if I sit here.
Yeah, you can sit here as well, in your place.
It's the flowers in the way, okay. Okay, I kind of prefer to stand when teaching. I'm sure you know what I mean, yeah. but can I have a clicker for the presentation? May I have a clicker? Oh, you operate. Okay. So,
Assistant.
right. So I'll just ask. Yeah. Next. Next.
Just call next.
Ah, right. Is it possible to
Next. Yeah.
you can't see the title? Need to remove the ribbon of the. It has to be slideshow. Yeah. But it needs to be slideshow. I'll just say what the title is for the slide. Ah. Perfect. Okay. So my topic today is motivating Indonesian learners of English. I think what I say is relevant to the teaching of other subjects as well as English. I don't know if you are all teachers of English or maybe other subjects. English? All English. Okay, right. And what I'm going to say is based on theory, some motivation theory, also based on research some research that I've done in Indonesia with Indonesian learners, and also based on my personal experience as a teacher of English in places like Bengkulu, Jambi, Jogja, Ujung Pandang, and Jakarta in the past. So, next. So you may ask, do Indonesian learners need motivating? Because I think when you go to a school, if you visit schools, you'll see they seem to be very happy places, Indonesian schools. Certainly, you see the pupils are often appear to be happy. They certainly appear to want to learn English. You know, often when I was living in Indonesia in the past, people would come up to me and say, "Hello, mister. You teach me English, yeah?" You know, it seems like they wanted to learn. Next. Even in the surprising places, people would come to me and want to practice their English with me. This is the swimming pool in Jambi. And next. So, and when I left Indonesia in 1999 to go to Leeds to work at University of Leeds, a question remained with me, which was, if Indonesians want to learn English so much, why don't they speak English? I mean, there seemed to be a kind of gap between their motivation, desire to learn English, and their achievement in English, especially back then. You know, this is 20 years ago, 23 years ago. So, you know, this was the question that actually inspired me to do my doctorate, which I started in 2002. Next. So from 2002 to 2004, for my PhD, I tracked the motivation of SMP pupils over the first 2 years of their study. of English. This was in an SMP in Jambi. So I actually went back to Jambi many times since I left in 99. I never came back to Bengkulu. This is the first time I come back. For Jambi, I've been going back often.
Oh, jahat atau baik.
That's not part of my presentation. Okay. So my PhD was a mixed method research. So I had questionnaires, surveys for the whole cohort of students at the beginning of their studies in SMP, and then after 2 years. Plus, I had a qualitative element as well, which was case studies of 12 students, 12 individual students who I got to know quite well. I visited them at home and interviewed them a few times. So it was like quantitative and qualitative mixed method study. Next. Oh, yeah. And after the 2 years of study, I found that the students in SMP were still quite motivated to study English. But even though they found some of the lessons in school to be quite boring, actually, they were still motivated. They still wanted to learn English. But I noticed there was already a big difference between in the ability in English of my participants. Some of them were making good progress and others were not. And in 2008, I went back to Jambi to meet my 12 case study participants. I think I met 11 of them. And I really noticed, so this was 6 years after they had been studying English formally for 6 years. You can see from the graph, this is just a graph showing the number of, in my interviews with them, how many times in the interview they initiated a turn in English. And you can see that this is comparing two of them, Diko and Marlena, and Widya and Krishna. And you can see that Widya and Krishna never spoke in English. They never initiated a turn in English with me. So we spoke Indonesian. You know, I really gave them the opportunity to speak in English, but they didn't want to. And they couldn't really say much. Whereas Diko and Marlena, you know, they were, you can see there, the graph is going up. They were becoming more confident in English and more competent in English. And the gap was growing. And actually, in 2013, I went back to Jambi again, and I met many of my participants. Some of them were still in Jambi, some of them were in Jakarta, some of them were in Bandung. By then, they were already 21, 22 years old. And the gap was huge. So some of them really were almost fluent in English by then. And Widya and Krishna and a couple of others were still very poor in English. Yeah, they had some knowledge. They could do some tests in English, but they just didn't want to speak English. They would like to be able to, but they didn't feel confident. So next. Yeah, so the problem, the issue is that these students seemed like Widya and Krishna, they were motivated, but they weren't engaged. I mean, if you ask them, do you want to learn English? Do you want to speak English? They would say, yes, I want, or Mao. But they weren't putting the effort into learning. Of course, we all know that learning a language is long, tedious, sometimes hard work. You have to be persistent. learning English. It's not something you can just pick up like that. And that's true even if you lived in the country where the language is spoken. So they were motivated, but they were not engaged. And this term engagement is now quite popular it's growing in popularity because there's a recognition that they're not the same thing. Motivation and engagement are not exactly the same. Next. These are two books. So engagement means the active participation and involvement in school-related activities and academic tasks. Yeah. So engagement is the actual learning effort. Motivation is perhaps what brings you to the course or the class. Next. And it seems like Widya and Krishna, and frankly, millions of other young Indonesians, they weren't sufficiently engaged in learning English in order to develop competence or mastery. Yeah. Right. Yeah, and next, yeah. So they weren't engaged in learning English either in class or out of class, because we have to remember that learning English these days is not just about the classroom. There are so many opportunities for learning English beyond the classroom now. Opportunities that didn't exist actually in the even in the 1990s when I was here in Bengkulu. In the 2000s, suddenly there was opportunities for learning English online, even just through music, through watching films, Facebook, apps like Duolingo. There are so many opportunities for learning English outside the classroom as well. But you have to be engaged. You have to want to engage with the language and be comfortable with it. Yes. So the rest of my talk now then is going to be about what kind of motivation leads to engagement. Why did some of my participants have the right kind of motivation, which meant that they did engage in learning? They put a lot of effort in and they developed fluency. And why did others not? I will then talk about two motivational principles and engagement strategies, which teachers can use, I believe, in order to motivate their learners, to give their learners the right kind of motivation. And then finally, I will mention a secret ingredient that I think is actually essential to be a successful motivating teacher. I'll come back to that. Okay, so motivation. You all will be aware of the distinction probably between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation, yeah? So intrinsic motivation is when we do something because we want to do that activity. We enjoy that activity itself. We get pleasure from it, satisfaction. We maybe have a sense of mastery. And, we all have things that we enjoy doing in that way. For me, it's things like playing tennis, love playing tennis, watching Leeds United, doing Sudoku. I enjoy that. These are things that I enjoy doing, and you will all have things. I don't really need anyone to tell me to do these things. I just do them. Traveling is another thing I love doing. And you can see intrinsic at work if you go to a kindergarten or a nursery and you watch the children, I'll just let you read this quotation. Can you all see can you read the screen? I'll just let you read it. Next. So yeah, nurseries, kindergartens, you watch the children there, they are doing things that they love. A good nursery is really just set up so that there are different tasks, different activities for children to do, and they move from one to another. When they get bored with something, they just move on to another thing which they're interested in. So it's intrinsic, they're intrinsically motivated and they're happy, joyful, and they learn a lot, of course, in kindergarten. The problems start when they go to school. Next. Just let you read this quote.
Online.
So when children go to school, they're suddenly being forced to do things that they haven't chosen to do. You know, they have to study subjects that maybe they're not interested in. They're told to do tasks that they may not choose to do. So, you know, they're no longer intrinsically motivated to do everything there. And Ryan and DC developed a theory about the relationship between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Next. Which you may be familiar with, self-determination theory. It's the most well-known and well-used theory in the field of education, and also in other areas like health psychology, sports psychology too. And I'll just talk a bit more about self-determination theory. Next. So the key thing about self-determination theory is that it says there are basically three types of motivation. There's A motivation, which isn't on the diagram. It's A motivation is where you're not motivated at all. You're not motivated to do it at all. And of course, you know, there are many things in life we just don't do because we're not motivated and no one tells us to do it, so we just don't do it. But then there is extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. And you can see over here, intrinsic motivation, intrinsic motivation is what we've been talking about, is where you do something because you want to do the activity. But extrinsic motivation, the real insight of self-determination theory was that extrinsic motivation, when you're doing something because someone's told you to do it or because of external pressure, there are actually different types of extrinsic motivation. And it's like a continuum going from extreme external to gradually more internal. So on the far left there, you'll see this is really controlled motivation. It's where you do something because of a reward. Someone's giving you a reward. Do this and I'll give you this. Or punishment. Do this and if you don't do this, I'll punish you, a threat. So that is extreme extrinsic motivation. But actually, you can be still externally motivated, but in a way that becomes more internal. So, for example, you might internalize those rewards and punishments and think, yeah, I should do this because I will then get some other reward. For example, you know, if I study hard, maybe I will get a good grade, or my teacher will be happy with me, you know. Or then it can become, the activity can start to become personally important. Yeah, I'll do this. I'll study English because I recognize English is actually important. You know, I don't like studying it, but I see that it is an important activity. And then it become even more individual or autonomous motivation, where you feel a kind of synthesis with the self. You think this activity is actually, it's me. It's like, I learn English because it's personally important to me and I'm good at it. This is something that is kind of synthesized with myself. I see myself in this activity. So what maybe started as external motivation has become internal. And this kind of motivation, integrated regulation, is just as good as intrinsic motivation for leading to engagement. Next. So if we think back to Krishna and Vidya, these guys who really never learnt, although they were motivated, they never learnt English successfully. We can see that they were basically extrinsically motivated. They were learning English because others told them to do it, or because they got some short-term reward, like passing an exam. They knew they had to do it, or they would suffer if they didn't do it. But they weren't really engaged. They only put enough effort in, to get by, to prevent bad things from happening, not because they really wanted to do it. Next. I'll give you another example. This is a picture of my daughter's bedroom when she was a bit younger, actually. But it was a total mess. Often it was a mess, and however many times we told her, tidy it up, she wouldn't. It would be like this. Eventually, I said, okay, I'll give you a pound, tidy it up. Next. Fantastic. What do you think it looked like a few days later? Yeah. I could pay her a pound and she would do it, but she would only do it if I paid her a pound. If I didn't pay her a pound, then, if I didn't give her a reward, she wouldn't do it. She was not internally motivated, or of course she wasn't intrinsically motivated. Who likes tidying their bedroom? No one actually enjoys it. But some people do it because it's important to them. They're internally motivated to do it. They feel like they should have a clean, tidy bedroom. So but my daughter wasn't like that. And I'm sorry to say that now she's 16 years old, different things in her bedroom, but it still looks like that. So my reward scheme didn't work. So the main tenets of self-determination theory, just to go over: intrinsic motivation is better than extrinsic motivation generally, because it leads to engagement. People will put effort into something that they enjoy doing. Next. However, extrinsic motivation that becomes internalized, is like integrated with the self, is just as good as in intrinsic motivation. Next. And the crucial thing is that in extrinsic motivation can become internalized. Controlled motivation can change to become autonomous motivation through good teaching. Teachers can make the difference. They can lead from next. They can help learners move from external regulation to integrated regulation. Next. And the two motivational principles that I'm now going to talk about are related to this. So motivational principle 1 is about trying to make learners' motivation more internal, more autonomous. Motivational principle 2 is about intrinsic motivation, trying to make your classroom an intrinsically motivating place. Next. So motivational principle 1. help the learner internalize their motivation for English. And I'm going to talk about 3 strategies that teachers can use for doing this. So, first one, promoting learner autonomy. One of the most basic principles of self-determination theory is that when you're internally autonomously motivated to do something, you feel you're doing it because you're invested in it. And giving learners a choice of what to do, some choice in your classroom, is a major step towards doing that. I know that often teachers don't have much choice themselves. We all have a syllabus, or we all are given a textbook to teach, and we have to use that. But there's always opportunities in lessons for giving learners more choice. And if you give them choice, they become invested in the activity. Just like, when a doctor, you take a child to a doctor for a vaccination, for their COVID vaccination, and often the doctor might say, do you want it in your left arm or your right arm? In fact, not just for children, when you had your COVID vaccination, probably the doctor gave you the choice. Do you want it in your left or your right? That's a choice. You're making a choice, and you say, I think I'll have it in my left. You're a little bit more motivated to have it. The jab, you fear it a little less. Same, if you give your students, you tell your students give them some homework, and you say, choose one of these 3 articles to read, and then write a brief summary and come back to the class next week, and this is a strategy that I use with my students in Leeds always, every week. Try to give them choice of articles to read. Because if you just give them one and say, read this article, come back next week, right, with a summary. First of all, they have no choice. They are doing it because you've told them to do it. If you give them a choice, they are immediately invested in it because they've made an active choice to read that article. So they're a little bit more personally motivated to do it. And of course, also, if you have 3 different articles, then they can come back and tell the others about the article that they've read. So they've kind of got a purpose to read it, to tell the others about it. So that's just a little example of promoting learner autonomy. There are other things you can do, negotiating class rules, for example, at the beginning of a course, how are we going to work together in the class? Giving regular feedback, getting regular feedback on your teaching is another way of giving learners autonomy. And of course, responding to the feedback that they give you. So some little strategies that you can use to promote learner autonomy. Another important strategy is, we know, as we said, language learning is long-term. It's a long and winding road, to quote the Beatles. It's, that long and winding road, you need staging posts. You need milestones. Learners need to get a sense that they are making progress along that road. So give them staging posts, give them a sense of progress. Examples, ways of doing it. Obviously, the old, just traditional way of doing it is encouragement. Saying, wow, that's good. Gosh, you've got good vocabulary, or, your writing is getting so much better. Personal feedback like that gives learners a sense of progress. But also things like tests. Yeah, tests, giving midterm tests, and then hopefully when students preparing them well for the test, they do well, they get a good mark. Of course, you can't fool them. You know, you can't just give them a good mark and say if they haven't done well. But giving them a test at the right level, and the marks they get, seeing an increase in marks, that gives them a sense of progress as well. And yeah, the judicious use of rewards is okay. Rewards for nothing, that's bad. Because if you give rewards to someone who's already motivated to do something, then they start to do it just for the rewards. It takes away it can undermine their intrinsic motivation, actually. So you have to be careful with rewards. Giving rewards without telling them in advance that you're giving them, that's better than saying, if you do this, I will give you a reward. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So overcoming obstacles and passing milestones can help to generate, to boost their internal motivation. Okay, the third strategy then is for internalizing motivation is to develop learners' ideal L2 selves. Are you familiar with the term ideal L2 self? Has anyone heard ideal self? Well, you all have ideal selves, especially you youngsters. You have vision of who you want to be in the future. These are kind of images of ourselves in the future that we start to develop when we're adolescents, usually, around the age of 12, 13, we get a sense of the person that we want to become. And we imagine ourselves in the future, and then we think of ourselves now, and we think, right, what do we need to do to achieve that? And we may have ideal selves in different parts of our life. Probably Eric, when he was growing up, Pat Shadial, when he was growing up, as a boy, age 12, he had a vision of himself playing football for Indonesia. Yeah. And you knew, you had that vision of yourself playing football for Indonesia, drove you to put in practice, to, exercise, to go running, to keep fit, to do lots of practice. Yeah. And you achieved your goal. Same for language learning. Young people aged 12 and 13 can develop a vision of themselves speaking English, traveling the world, studying overseas in English, maybe working, having a good job in a bank or being a head teacher or head of English department in a school. A vision of yourself being fluent in English. And if you can give your learners this vision, it will really boost their motivation. So, as I've been saying, it's a vision of the self. And it's when you compare your actual self now with who you want to be in the future, it's the awareness of the discrepancy between the ideal and the actual that drives you to put in the effort to learn. So we can make an assumption that learners who genuinely see themselves as future users of English will put more effort into learning the language. The ideal self is often contrasted with the ought to self. This is a theory, by the way, of Zoltan Dernier, Professor Zoltan Dernier of Nottingham University, who sadly passed away last month. Yeah, very sad. He was my examiner, my Viva examiner, and I knew him quite well. He was a very inspiring figure in the field of motivation and has written many, many books. And his website actually is still available, and you can read. He was very generous. He put on many of his articles are free to read online. But in his L2 motivational self system, It had the ideal self and the ought to self. The ought to self is the person you see who you think that other people want you to be. So people like parents, you know, your parents also probably had an image of you as you were growing up, who they wanted you to be. And sometimes your ideal self and your ought to self are the same. Great. But sometimes they're not, and they can cause conflict. You know, maybe you wanted to be a singer in a rock band and your parents did not. They wanted you to be yeah. So it can cause problems. Yeah, I noticed that my participants like Widya and Krishna, they had strong ought to self, L2 self, to learn English. This was another one of them who never really learned English, Munanda. Actually, Munanda was a very good footballer. He played football for Kerinci, Kabupaten. He was good, very good footballer. But he said, this is from an extract from an interview with him. He said, in Jambi, we need English. If you don't have English, it's difficult. Wherever you go, you need English. Look at the way he's speaking about English. It's not that he is aspiring to English, that he wants to become competent in English. It's about needing, must learn. If your learners use this kind of language, then probably they have an ought to self. You know, they feel they're externally motivated. If they say things like, I want English, you know, I desire, I want to become a person who can do something, you know, then probably they've got an ideal self. You know, that often the discourse, the language is a clue to their thinking. So how can we help develop learners' ideal L2 selves? Consistently reminding learners of why learning English is of benefit to them is important. And then doing activities which encourage learners to imagine themselves. You know, these activities which develop this vision. One of the best kind of activities is to bring near peer role models into the class. So kids who are maybe 2 or 3 years older, who are very good at English, bring them to the class and have them talk to the students. Those are the people who will inspire the students. Sometimes people think, oh, you know, bring a native speaker to the class. Well, yeah, that can be fun, maybe. But then the learners are not aspiring to be native speakers. You can't become a native speaker. That's a logical impossibility. The role models, the best role models are older Indonesians who've become very good at English and who are using English in their careers, for example. Another really good activity actually is a role play, doing a class reunion role play. So if you're doing it with sort of 14-year-olds in SMP, then you have them, imagine you're having a class reunion and you're, you know, coming back in 10 years' time. Imagine what you are going to be doing in 10 years' time. You know, what job would you like to have? You know, what skills will you have, and so on. And then they prepare their role, and then they mingle, you know, like a class reunion. That's just a kind of one example of an activity for developing a future vision of yourself speaking English. Okay, so motivational principle 2, provide an intrinsically motivating learning experience. So this is, we're now moving to intrinsic motivation. And again, 3 engagement strategies I'm going to suggest. Firstly, do fun things in the class. Secondly, relate activities to learners' lives. And thirdly, developing rapport. Let's start with doing fun things. And I'm going to stop talking for a moment and ask you to talk to your neighbor, because I'm very interested to hear actually what your answer to this question is. What kinds of activities do young Indonesians enjoy doing in class? Okay, just talk 3 minutes, okay? Talk to your neighbor, and then you can tell me. I'm going to take a break for... Like rambutan, they're very nice. So yeah, clinking. They're like also like there's another one we used to get in Jambi, just like this. Well, yeah, Jambi. Yeah. The skin is a bit different. Duku was smooth.
Yeah, this one is.
Yeah.
So you will not go to Jambi then?
No, not this time.
This fact is in Australia. It's less, yeah?
Gulen, she became academic lecturer. Yeah, she did well in Monash.
Monash.
Mm.
Melbourne.
Yeah, Monash is Melbourne.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read her articles. We exchanged emails a bit, but it's fed, I don't know. But they were together, I think, as a family.
Yeah, now
Back together.
It's nothing to do.
I don't know.
Just Dharma.
Yeah. Well,
You Dharma.
oh, house husband. Okay. So tell me, what do Indonesian students like to do in class? Games? What kind of games? Can you give examples? Come on, shout out.
Don't be shy.
Okay. Yeah, guessing games then. Yeah, yeah. There's so many different guessing games. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So games, I think, I mean, games are intrinsically motivating for everyone, adults, young people, and what other activities, though, language learning activities do you find? Coaching, watching what?
TikTok.
Do you mean like watching films in English? Yeah, okay, yeah. Do you find though that if they watch, they learn? They do. Always? Right. So it has to be kind of structured watching activity of some kind. Yeah, but yeah, you're right. Video, I think video is, can be intrinsically motivating, well-chosen videos. Yeah, yeah. And, you know, you're lucky. You're lucky in your teaching careers, because when Pat Shariel and I were teachers of English, getting a video to show students was really difficult. You know, we had VHS tapes. You remember? Yeah. Beta, even Betamax. Yeah. Now you're just so lucky. YouTube, so many clips available.
Rewinding is 1 hour.
Yeah, finding the place clip. Oh. Okay, games, video. Role play, yeah. Okay, yeah. Chatting. Okay, right. Chatting. Do you mean chatting face to face or chatting online? Oh, yeah. Nobrol. That's better translate that into Cambodian. Nobrol. Yeah. So role play, obviously. What kind of role plays do you do, Pat? Right. Yeah, like a simulation. Yeah, yeah. Okay, great. Are there any other examples? Singing songs. Yes. Yeah, yeah. One of the most successful teachers in the school in Jambi, where I did my research, I watched her teach many times and she had the children in the palm of her hand. You know, these were like 11, 12-year-olds. The first year of, actually year 7, I think, in SMP. And she used to sing song every lesson. They loved it. Yeah.
Indonesian love pretending.
Pretending.
Drama.
Oh, drama. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we English, we love drama too. Shakespeare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Drama. I mean, drama is can work really well for some students. Obviously, other students don't like acting, but yeah. I mean, generally speaking, I have to say that I've taught in different countries, and I've taught in Saudi Arabia, Bulgaria, Oman, in the Middle East, Oman, Sweden, and Indonesia. And I have to say that Indonesian students were the most fun to teach. You know, they kind of come to class hoping to have fun. So if you do something that's entertaining, they'll respond to that. It wasn't always in my teaching career in Bulgaria, for example. In Bulgarians are fine people, but they regarded the classroom as a serious place, not really somewhere to play games. But I think Indonesians like combining work and pleasure. Yeah. Okay, move on. So yeah, again, you know, there are so many books now available for making classes entertaining. I really think there is no excuse now. There's no excuse for your classes to be boring. Yes, they can be hard work. You know, yeah, language learning is hard work. You can't just have fun. There's still grammar exercises to do, vocabulary exercises, and so on. Reading comprehension. But, you know, still, you can make those activities more entertaining make sure that they do 10 minutes on a grammar exercise and then you do something fun. Keep them energized. Second engagement strategy then is to relate activities to learners' lives, sometimes called personalization. Here's just one example of an activity where you know, you always have to do some activity describing people in English. So rather than just describing someone, you know, pictures in a textbook, why not do an activity like this? This is what you call a humanistic activity. Think of someone special in your life. You know, it could be one of these people. Consider, why are they special? What did they do that made them special? Next. Work with a partner. Tell them about the special person. Ask questions about their special person. I mean, it's a very, very simple activity, but personally meaningful for the learners. You know, there is a big difference between this kind of activity and asking learners to describe someone in their textbook. Huge difference motivationally. Okay. Third engagement strategy, developing rapport. That is, you know, developing a good relationship with the students. Both, that's you as a teacher with the students and among the students themselves. Again, you know, Indonesians are tend to be very sociable people. They don't, you know, they like to be friends with people, and you don't, in generally, the dynamics of a class are good. Of course, you know, not everyone can be best friends, but generally Indonesians are good at sort of getting on with other people. So you don't have to work too hard in Indonesia to do this. But I just recommend, this is a colleague actually who works in Austria, Sarah Mercer. I really recommend you looking at her lecture, on her seminar on YouTube on this topic. Next. Yeah, she says, you know, without that human connection between a teacher and the classes and the learners, education becomes a battle. And it's true, you know, it becomes hard work. Yeah. So, you know, caring, pedagogical caring, caring about your learners, feeling empathy for them, communicating effectively with them. You know, these are sort of the basic skills of teaching, and they contribute a lot to internalizing learners' motivation, making them want to be in your class. By the way, will this, I'm happy for my PowerPoint to be made available to, so you can see, you can just click on the link. Yeah. Can I do that? Okay. Next. So finally come to the last part of my talk, the secret ingredient. So one thing, other thing, which I actually think without this secret ingredient, ultimately, you may not be successful in motivating your students. So this secret ingredient became clear to me actually after I conducted a research project in China and Indonesia with my colleague Martin Waddell at Leeds. I'll just tell you briefly about the project. What we did was try to find examples of inspiring teachers. So these were teachers who gave kind of long-term motivation for their learners. Because in a way, there's a difference between motivating and inspiring. Motivating can be short-term. You know, you can motivate your learners to do something. But if you want them to become truly motivated over the long term, then maybe we should use the term inspire. So the way we did it was we sent out a survey to learners in Guangzhou in China and Jakarta in Indonesia for people aged between 14 and 22. And we asked them to nominate teachers who had inspired them to learn English at school, who'd had a kind of big impact on their motivation. And we got a lot of responses, hundreds of responses. And we identified some teachers who had multiple nominations. So teachers who'd got like 20 or 30 learners who had said that they were really inspiring. And then we went to visit a handful of these teachers in China and in Guangzhou and in Jakarta. We watched them teach and we interviewed them. So there were 7 teachers in all, 3 in Guangzhou, 4 in Jakarta. Here's a picture of an inspiring Chinese teacher. I hope that's, just a moment. I hope that if you click on it, okay. Can you just pause it?
That means to say, you should finish the.
Okay, this is a very short clip from her class in a junior middle school in China. The topic of the lesson is attributive clauses. Do you know what attributive clauses are? I didn't. I had to ask a Chinese student to tell me. I think relative clauses. Yeah, like the teacher who works in Jambi. So it was a grammar lesson, a very serious grammar lesson. You know, Chinese education system is very serious, full of exams, constant tests, and the exams are full of grammar. You know, so the Chinese, whoa, they, you know, if you see compare a Chinese class with an Indonesian school class, they're quite different. So this teacher, though, had been nominated by many pupils as being inspiring. So I'd like you to just watch this clip of her grammar class and just think, what is it about her maybe that inspires her pupils? Okay. And you may not be, she's speaking in Chinese a lot of the time, so you won't be able to understand what she's saying. Sorry, go back. Can you click play?
And now, what we're going to do today is try to find the answers to all these questions. That means to say, you should finish the chart I have assigned you to finish, right? 大家完成老师布置大家去完成的那个表格。And now I will allow you 10 minutes. 10 minutes for group discussion. Understand? Yeah. And try to make sure that we know how to finish the chart. And the following students, please come to this place of the classroom and we will have a discussion together. Okay, following students.
我告诉你了，1、2是非限制，3、4是什么呀？限制。所以他们的特点就是用什么？对了呀，对号隔开。那么它们的作用是什么呢？非限制的，它只是起一个什么作用啊？叫做附加说明。很多个，但是同一个呢，就只有1种。OK， 所以呢，现在再来看看例子，再给你们机会想想，谁是指同一，谁是指同一个、同一类，哪一个指同类？对了，很好。同一个就用谁 ？that。同一物呢？同类呢就用谁 ？as。为什么？如果实在不理解，老师过会儿再解释，好吗？能理解的吗？有没有不能理解的？好。同一类。句子里面的 as 具体要怎么用？是不是？好，蔡俊杰又提了个问题，那 as 怎么用？你告诉他，他刚才回答了问题，现在他又不会了哦。什么时候用 as？ 它用在什么地方？先行词的后面。 是不是就是这样子啊？对 ，very good， 很好的回答。前面都有谁？或者是谁
Just pause.
No.
Pause. Back. Pause. That's it. So, would anyone like to suggest what is it that makes her inspiring? Right. Okay. Yeah, she was. Yeah. So you notice that in the group work, she was very animated, speaking very fast in Chinese, actually, to explain the grammar. She was mixing Chinese and English. But yeah, to me, it almost, when she was standing there with the students around her, it almost looked like a basketball coach, during a timeout, talking to his team, saying, you do this, you do that. So I think that's part of it. Would anyone else like to? Yeah. Okay. She's enthusiastic about her work. Yeah. I think this is it. This is the key. If you as a teacher are not motivated to teach, how can you expect your students to be motivated? Next. So the secret ingredient is actually your own motivation to teach. So yeah, I think teachers need to have a kind of passion for, ideally both, a passion for the subject, so for English, to actually love English, but also for teaching, for actually passing on your knowledge. Among the 7 inspiring teachers that we identified, this was the one thing they had in common, that they really did have a passion for teaching. The way they taught was quite different. The Chinese teachers were very different, the way they taught, from the Indonesian teachers, actually. The way they organized their classes was quite different. Even the manner of communication was different. The Chinese classes tended to be much more teacher dominated, whereas the Indonesian teachers we saw, 3 of the 4, actually, most of the class was group work, actually. They didn't do much teaching themselves. But what these inspiring teachers all had in common was that they were passionate about teaching. They were motivated teachers. This is one of my favorite quotations about education by the Hungarian Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. I'll just let you read it. I don't know if you can, maybe some of you, you've all reached you were all very motivated learners of English, I'm sure. Maybe you can think of an inspiring teacher that you had who really, changed your motivation and gave you an ideal self, maybe not, actually genuinely inspiring teachers are not that common. I mean, because inspiring teaching is about kind of moment in time, the right teacher and the right pupil at the right moment. So, we can't all be inspiring teachers, but I think we can all be motivated teachers. And if you're not motivated to teach, really, then, as I say, you can't expect your teachers, your students to be motivated. You know, if they notice that you don't really care about English, why should they care? Or history, or science, or maths. It's true for all subjects. You have to, you know, show why this subject is worth learning, why it can be intrinsically motivating to learn, and, you know, what are the benefits that it can bring you. Next. So I'm just going to summarize what I've been saying. Language learning is a long, challenging process. Extrinsic motivation will probably not enable us to reach our goals. You know, it can get you some of the way, but it's not going to get you to the end point. It's just not enough extrinsic motivation. I don't think anyone has learned another language successfully by being forced to do it. I can't imagine. Maybe in the armed forces, possibly. But, you know, even my Chinese students in Leeds, I have many Chinese students, and, you know, even they develop internal motivation at some point. So we need intrinsic, or at least internalized motivation to achieve our goals in the long term. These are the kinds of motivation that teachers need to try to develop in their learners then. One final quotation there, I'll let you read it. So, terima kasih atas perhatian Anda, and I welcome your comments or questions.
See, like I said, Martin language is very clear, not like listen to the British people. You know, when you...
I am a British person.
I know, but your English is not British. International.
Okay.
You know, when you go to UK in 2 months, you will lolak there. Martin, one thing that I always ask my students is to motivate the students is I always say you have to be honest. And then you have to be honest to your student that you also made a mistake, not only the student. So tell the student to be honest. Don't worry of making mistakes. And the second one is, like Martin said, don't punish your student. You know what happened in Indonesia, especially in Bengkulu, Martin?
Yeah.
When they asked the students, where did you go yesterday? And they said, the student said, I go to the beach yesterday. Salah kau tu. The judge, and then suddenly the students, ndak bahasa Inggris, ndak mati saya bu. So don't punish your students. So like Martin said, the path is, you know, berliku-liku seperti ular, so long time. So making the progress, let them make a mistake. So you just ask, don't worry to make a mistake. So that is very inspiring, Martin. Your material to motivate the students, that is very important for us in Indonesia, to give the students belief in speaking English. Especially, you have to be close to your students. Yeah. Saya ko guru tidak pacak dekik-dekik ke mahasiswa ke murid, itu tak boleh. So you know, communicate. Yeah, language is communicative. I think your chance now to give the question, to give the idea, or the chat room. Okay, you can check, Martin.
Right. There's me.
Can you do that? Can you answer suddenly? Oh, here. Hi, Martin.
Hilda.
Yeah.
Oh. Is integrating L2 in the mother tongue at a very young age is a motivational pressure? Can I answer? Yeah, the question from Cambodia is a very good question. Yeah, I mean, my view, personal view, is that yeah, you should learn in your mother tongue first, and that is generally the view, that one shouldn't start learning in a foreign language until you're, you know, junior high school, really, or year 6, because you have to have a good foundation of academic language in your mother tongue. That's my belief. Of course, you can mix languages a little bit. There's no harm in starting to learn a foreign language in primary school, but you should, your main studies should be in your mother tongue, I think. Yeah, at that age. So I'm reading Lucy's question. Yeah, quite a long and complex issue. She raises many kind of complex issues there. You know, like, is ideal L2 self the same with behavior? No, I mean, if your ideal L2 self is going to motivate you, then, you know, it needs first, there needs to be certain conditions in place. It has to be realistic. You know, if your ideal L2 self is just fantasy, you're not going to be motivated really to, I mean, for example, I'm a tennis player. If my ideal L2 self was to win Wimbledon men's final, it's pure fantasy. I'm not going to, it's not going to drive me to practice my, you know, improve my forehand. But if my goal is to become top of the league in my tennis club, yes, that's, you know, I can see myself being, well, I could in the past see myself winning club championship, maybe club, that would motivate me. So, you know, it has to be realistic. You have to plan. You know, it's no good just fantasizing. You have to have a plan to put into action. So yeah, just having the ideal L2 self is not enough. Sydney. Yeah. Could you continue? Yeah. Yeah. Interesting and provocative question here. Yeah, interesting, because I mean, teachers, you know, teachers often say, oh, he's lazy, you know, that student doesn't care, you know, she's not motivated. I've done that myself. And I remember actually when I was doing my master's program, my master's at Lancaster University, 1990, yeah. Yeah, I used the word lazy about students, and my tutor at Lancaster, and Andrew Littlejohn, said, you can't use that word. No student is intrinsically lazy. No one is actually, they're lazy. If they are lazy, it's because you have made them lazy, or you're letting them be lazy. You know, everyone wants to learn. We are born, when we are born, we are given a gift to explore the world. You know, that is what we are born to do. And we never stop, really. I mean, one should never stop. You know, if you stop learning, well, maybe that's the time to move on to the next world, you know. So learn, you know, the pupils in your class want to learn something, some things. The challenge for the teacher is to make them want to learn your subject. You know, they're not intrinsically lazy. So actually, I disagree with the senior teacher who said that some students are always lazy or negligent. You can't motivate them. Actually, you know, every student can be motivated, but I'm not pretending that it's easy. It's not. Some students it is easy. With other students, it's not. And it's one of the big challenges of teaching. Okay, maybe there are questions or comments from the audience.
Yeah, Eko. Yeah, Eko. Lancaster.
Yeah, thank you, Pat Eko. I mean, your dilemma is one I think that many teachers face, you know, and because learners do have false expectations, false hopes and you know, you can't avoid the reality. I think you need to explain to learners that language learning is a long-term. It is hard, you know, that it's, you know, you've probably heard of the U-shaped curve in second language acquisition, that often, you know, you might start getting a grammar point right, and then you start getting it wrong again, and then you get it right again. You know, I mean, and then there's the intermediate plateau, you know, where you make quick progress to begin with. It feels like quick progress, but then the plateau, the intermediate plateau, where it just seems like you're not advancing at all. So I think having a frank discussion with learners about this in Indonesian, if necessary, you know, is really important, so that you set their expectations at the right level. But then, you know, during the course, as I was saying, you have to give them staging posts, milestones. You know, they have to have a sense of progress. Otherwise, they will get disheartened and frustrated. So, you know, giving them a sense of progress through things like personal encouragement, through setting tests, you know, giving tests at the right level. Obviously, if you're teaching a TOEFL or IELTS, you're giving them practice tests, you know, and probably they think, oh, you know, I can go from 450 to 550 on TOEFL, you know, in 2 months. Yeah, whatever. And that, you know, you have to say, okay, if you make a 10-point improvement, great, that's good. Yeah, I mean, I think that you put your finger on one of the, you know, the most challenging things about teaching language. You know, it's different from other subjects, language. With other subjects, if you're teaching, say, history, and I started as a history teacher, actually. You know, history, you've got topics. You do the Tudor kings of England, you know, you give knowledge to students, or the students learn something. They have a sense, yeah, I've learned about King Henry VIII. I know that now. Language, it's not really like that. You know, you could say, oh yeah, I've learned about the present perfect tense, but it'll be years before they can actually use the present perfect tense correctly. They need to know that. They need to understand that.
Okay, any more?
Integrative and instrumental motivation are terms that they're types of motivation that were introduced by Robert Gardner, who's a very well-known motivation researcher back in the 1970s and 80s. They've kind of gone out of fashion now. But instrumental motivation is to learn something in order to get some reward, some other benefit. Integrative motivation is learning a language in order to integrate with the people or the culture or the nation that speaks the language. So integrative motivation, you know, if you're very interested in British or American culture, say, or you want to communicate with British or American or Australian friends, then you're integratively motivated. The problem with this is that nowadays, English is an international language. It's the global language. It's not just the language of Britain or America or Australia. So I don't think integrative motivation really is that important anymore. Maybe it still motivates some learners, but most won't be motivated that way. Excuse me. I don't know what Tanzil thinks of my answer, but if you're there, Tanzil, you can type your answer in the chat.
Yeah, Pak Tanzil, are you here? Is he there?
Yeah, thank you, Professor Lam. What I want to know further is about what factors. Okay, it's okay if today we are in favor to use the terms intrinsic and extrinsic, but what I want to know further is about what factors do you contribute to those kinds of motivations, whether intrinsic and extrinsic ones. Okay, what factors which affect to those kinds of motivations? Thank you.
Thank you, Pat Tanzil. Yeah. I mean, there are many factors in the socio-economic context which influence or shape learners' motivation. I mean, maybe number one, you would say family, parents, parental attitudes, siblings, friends, or as well, but family probably first of all. Peer group are very important. The school, the institutional factor, you know, the schools have a kind of culture, different schools, and some schools have a culture of learning, a stronger culture of learning, I think. I think if you as a teacher, you know, and you move from school to school, you might recognize that some schools have a more positive sort of atmosphere for learning. And then society, you know, society as a whole, the environment is a factor as well. I mean, one of the reasons why, I mean, standards of English in Indonesia are improving rapidly now. Young people today in Indonesia, they're especially in the big cities, you know, I don't know whether I would include Bengkulu in this, but in Jakarta, in the center of Jakarta, you go into a shop, I can just start speaking English. The shopkeeper will respond in English. You know, standards of English are really improving. And that's partly because of the wider environment, the broader environment. There's so much English in the landscape around us, advertisements, public notices, on TV, of course. And, you know, there are strong messages given through society that English can be beneficial for young people. If you want to be, you know, first of all, you're an Indonesian citizen, but secondly, you're a global citizen. And to be a global citizen, you need to speak the global language, English. So, yes, I mean, there are many motivations, a very complex phenomenon, and there are many factors involved in shaping it, I think.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lam.
Probably one or two more questions.
Sure.
Yeah. Yep. You. No.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that inspiring teachers come in many different forms, you know. I will always remember when I was doing my teacher training, I was training to be a history teacher, actually. And I remember that our trainer brought a colleague of his from another school, from a school. I think he was a head teacher, actually, but he was also a history teacher. And he spoke to us, like this. He looked around the room, catching our eyes. He spoke very softly and slowly. and he kept our attention for 15 minutes. He wasn't at all humorous, but we hung on every word. You know, and it just showed me that actually, you know, that takes many different personalities. You know, I guess, you know, it's the same in friendship. You know, you can be friends with many different people of different types. It's just something that connects. Yeah, you connect, and I think that's true for. And of course, you can't hope as a teacher to connect personally, deeply with every student. You can't. But, you know, you just have to do your best. And partly it's a matter of luck. It's a matter of just human nature, you know, which is too deep and complex for us to understand, really, you know. So I don't think you have to be humorous. You don't have to have a loud voice. You don't have to dance around. You know, you don't have to play games. Just have to find what's right for you. In a way, you know, it's about being authentic to who you are.
Probably one more question before we close the workshop. Yeah, Wisma, Ibu Wisma.
Where is it heading? Yeah. Well, it's still a very active field, motivation research. You know, it's a very popular topic for my students to do research on. You know, yeah, and I have several PhD students also, but also master's students working on it. And you know, it's still there's still so much we don't know, don't understand, especially I think in pedagogy, you know, in how we can influence learners' motivation. This afternoon, I'm doing a workshop at UPT. I'll talk about one area. Dynamic directed motivational currents. So I think, you know, we're recognizing that motivation is dynamic. That's one thing. It changes. You know, you're not permanently motivated or permanently demotivated. It changes, you know, it fluctuates motivation. We have to try to understand that. It's also complex. We understand, you know, yes, the ideal self is an important construct, I think, but it's not the magic solution. You know, it's just one element. It might be very important for some individuals, for others it's less important. So the complexity of motivation is important. And I think, yeah, the engagement, the notion of engagement, that's a very vogue term at the moment. There's a lot of research, which I think, yeah, it's about how we can go from motivation to actually putting motivation into action. That's what engagement is about. Yeah. Demotivation. On demotivation. Yes, yeah. Yes, sometimes I think not this year, but last year I had a student who did her master's dissertation on demotivation. I mean, it's a very big topic. In fact, some people might say it's the most important topic, because actually, if you look at the learners in the first year of SMP, the first class, the first week of the semester, they are motivated. They're all motivated. They're motivated to learn English and maths and science, and, you know, they want to learn everything. But what happens? Little by little, they become demotivated. So demotivation is the most common experience. So very important topic. Yeah.
So, Prof. Safnil, masih ada satu lagi dari situ? Nggak, habis dari internet? No, okay. So I think we can stop now. Okay. Yeah, very inspired material. Yeah, what Mr. Martin Lam said, that motivation is one of the key for learning English, especially for our students. Thank you, Martin.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks again for inviting me here.
Yeah, they're happy. So, Prof. Safnil, you can close now the section from the Prodi of Bahasa Inggris. You can say, sit down there.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Martin Lam, for a very useful topic, information and experience. So hopefully the students have got some new ideas for their research and also for the lecturers. Yeah, about 25 participants are attending it through the Zoom. Yeah, and one from Sydney. Yeah, yeah, and several from Cambodia and from Thailand and from Java Islands. Yeah, and also offline students attending this. Yeah, we hope that we can work together in the future. Yeah, you can exam our students. Yeah, thesis. We can work together to do research. Like Wisma is also specialized in teaching. Yeah. But for me, I'm doing linguistic, something about linguistic. Yeah. And we have some new teachers here. So a little bit, we have a lot of examples here, lecturers with instrumental motivation, they are quite successful. And when they came here, they were given promise by the president of the university, if they can get a TOEFL score 500 or above, they will get a scholarship to study abroad. Yeah, and some of them were very successful, but I don't know whether their English is still spoken now. Yeah, because after coming back from overseas, they don't speak English at all, so their English get rotten. Again, thank you very much for everyone, for Pak Saryal, for Dr. Martin Lam, Azam, and other participants. That's all for our program. Very interesting and fruitful. Yeah. Let's close our session by saying Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah Alamin. Yeah. Thank you for participant from the Zoom. Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.